You know, we're going down there, we're trying to face a real situation that will occur, namely there will be a mob at the courthouse.
Organizers called it Freedom Summer, and its purpose was to enlist and train mostly white Northern college students as volunteers for a massive voter registration drive in Mississippi, where only 6% of eligible blacks were actually registered to vote.
We're here on legitimate voter registration business. It's our constitutional right to try to register. It's our constitutional right to come in the courthouse.
For the most part, Freedom Summer was the idea of this man, Bob Moses, a math teacher from New York City who'd been trying with limited success to register black voters in Mississippi since 1961. Over the years, he'd been beaten, shot at, and jailed. His friends were murdered for trying to register blacks.
Here we have this whole congressional district. Majority of the people eligible to vote are black, and hardly any of them can even, go to try.
That's a section of the Constitution of the state of Mississippi.
In June of 1964, hundreds of idealistic college students converged on a small women's college in Oxford, Ohio, for orientation and training before being sent south. Here's a report filed at the time by NBC's Jack Perkins.
Because the project these young people have come here to be trained for is unorthodox, some of the training is unorthodox.
We want to get used to this, used to people jeering at us, and we also want the white students who are playing the mob to get used to saying things, calling out epithets, calling people niggers and nigger lovers.
James Foreman, Executive Secretary of SNCC, leads this maneuver.
Oh, yeah!
A group of students portraying an angry mob. They are supposed to jeer and curse, and that's all. But a mob, even a friendly mob, play acting can get out of hand.
Okay. That was very good because you all got carried away, see? I mean, you were just supposed to yell and you started hitting us so you got off your frustration,
After a week of this, they are ready to leave, remembering a warning.
You're going to be beaten, and you're going to be thrown in jail, you're going to be cursed, spit on, and everything else that you can perhaps name.
With some knowledge of what may await them, but with little protection against it, they set forth for a summer in Mississippi. Jack Perkins, NBC News, Oxford, Ohio.
One of the young men attending that training session was Andrew Goodman, a student from Queens College in New York. His mother, Carolyn, still remembers the day her son told her he wanted to spend the summer in Mississippi.
All we knew is he was going to go and be trained, and we gave him permission. Why? Because we couldn't talk out of two sides of our mouths. We couldn't say this is a horror and then say, well, it's okay for other kids, and it's certainly okay for black kids, but not for my white middle-class son. I don't want anything to happen to him. I don't want him to be beaten. I don't want him to be ending up in jail and so on. So off he went to Ohio.
Shortly before completing their training and heading south, a church in Neshoba County, Mississippi, was burned to the ground. The news was of particular interest to two of the Ohio trainers. Michael Schwerner from New York City and James Cheney, a native Mississippian, had helped establish a voter registration school in that church before coming to Ohio. Within hours of hearing the news, they decided to return to Mississippi. Riding in the backseat of their car was a raw recruit, Andrew Goodman.
He said, Mom, I'm going down to Mississippi, to Neshoba, and he told me why. So I was a little nervous about that, but I didn't say anything. I just was upset about it because I had a feeling that something wasn't right.
They went into the state at the period where it was most roiled up and most dangerous, and there was no one else going in when they went in.
The next day, after visiting the ruins of the church, the men headed back to their home office in Meridian, Mississippi. It was around 4 in the afternoon when the trio was spotted by a deputy sheriff just inside the city limits. He arrested them for speeding.
They paid the fine and I released them.
and escorted them to their car.
There is some mystery and some fear concerning 3 of the civil rights workers, 2 whites from New York City and a Negro from Mississippi. Police say they arrested the 3 men for speeding yesterday, but released them after they posted bond.
For us, that means that they're dead, right? Just like that, yes. I mean, they're okay if they're in jail. They're not going to really, with all this attention and the Justice Department calling and asking, they're not going to kill them in jail, right? But if they release them, then we would know where they are, right, within an hour for sure.
Back in Ohio, Bob Moses had little time to mourn those he assumed were dead. He felt it was imperative to discuss the situation and the risks with the students who were about to go to Mississippi.
I just walked up and I said, the kids are dead. Really, no noise. They had to absorb that they were really dead.
Remarkably, Moses says only 1 volunteer quit. A few days later, in Mississippi, a burned-out car was discovered in a swampy area. But with no bodies found, the families and friends of the missing men continued to hold out hope.
As a parent of one of the 3 boys who are missing, I am making this plea to all parents everywhere, particularly to the parents of Mississippi. I want to beg them to cooperate in every way possible in the search for these 3 boys and to come forward with any information of any kind which will help in the search.
Rita Schwerner, wife of Michael Schwerner, also spoke to the press.
You know, something happened to them. They're being held somewhere or something happened. And I am going to find the answer. If the federal authorities can do it, this is fine. But if all the federal authorities at the beck and call of the government are unable to do so, then I, as just one individual, will go down and attempt to do so. If this means driving every back road, every dirt road, every alley in the county of Neshoba, I will do it.
Shortly after the civil rights workers disappeared, NBC News aired a special report hosted by Frank McGee that not only recounted the known facts of the case, but also offered viewers an unflinching look at the harsh realities of race relations in Mississippi.
It is hostile country with a hostile attitude towards civil rights workers. A report from John Chancellor, NBC News, New Orleans.
This is backwoods Mississippi, silent and suspicious. The silence and the suspicion is felt here at the county seat, Philadelphia, where Cheney, Goodman, and Schwerner were arrested for speeding. The concern in Philadelphia, Mississippi today, however, is not so much with civil rights workers who have come and gone, but with others on the way. This morning, 50 men signed up as volunteer auxiliary policemen under a plan formed weeks ago. The auxiliaries will be empowered to arrest civil rights workers. Not all the reaction to the invasion of the civil rights workers has been official. There have been, for example, 5 church burnings in the past dozen days. All the churches were Negro churches. None of the fires of accidental origin, no arrest.
I got to Philadelphia, I think, the day after we learned they were missing.
NBC News correspondent Richard Valeriani covered the civil rights movement throughout the South.
Scariest place you've ever been. I mean, I don't know, the hatred was almost palpable. It was like heavy summer Mississippi air, and you could almost feel it.
In Washington, President Lyndon Johnson made finding the 3 young men a top priority. Teams of FBI agents were assigned to the case, and sailors from a nearby naval installation were called in to search for bodies.
It could be that it is a hoax to attract attention on this effort of these little groups that have failed, but that is something I do not know.
It's sorry for any children, any youngsters whose parents do not insist that they stay away from other states, trying to tell the people of other states how to conduct their affairs because they do not know what it's all about. And it's pitiful that parents haven't trained their children in the way that they should have. They ought to stay at home and work. They ought to stay at home and tend to their own business.
Tonight in Washington, the FBI announced the finding of 3 bodies in graves at the site of a dam near Philadelphia, Mississippi, where 3 civil rights workers disappeared a month ago. The bodies were found in a wooded area about 6 miles southwest of Philadelphia, where the young men were last seen. The 3, Andrew Goodman, James Cheney, and Michael Schwerner, were last seen the night of June 21st. The FBI said a search party of agents turned up the bodies late this afternoon while digging in thick woods and underbrush several hundred yards off Route 21. The agency said the bodies are being taken to Jackson, Mississippi, where an effort will be made to identify them and determine the cause of death.
I seem to remember that we were in the theater. We were at the theater and friends came and said, come back because they found the bodies. They're buried under this earthen dam.
Mrs. Goodman, are you optimistic about the ultimate solution of the civil rights problem in the United States?
All I can say is that if the people who have expressed their feelings most eloquently to us through these past weeks are any reflection of what I believe are the vast numbers of people throughout this country, I have great optimism.
As you know, lynchings in Mississippi are not uncommon. They have occurred for many, many, many years. Maybe this one could be the last if some positive steps were taken to show that the people in this country have had enough, that they require that human beings be treated as human beings.
Do you feel any vengeance? Do you have any...
No. I feel a great deal of pity.
Well, you all know that I am Fannie Lee Cheney, the mother of James Cheney. Y'all know what my child was doing? He was trying for a soul to make a better living. And he had 2 fellows from New York, had their own home and everything, didn't have nothing to worry. But they come here to help us. Did y'all know they come here to help us? They died for us.
Though the state of Mississippi never charged anyone with the murders of Schwerner, Cheney, and Goodman, 7 Klansmen, including Deputy Sheriff Cecil Price, were eventually convicted in federal court on charges of violating their civil rights.
The future of the United States of America may well be determined here in Mississippi, for it is here that democracy faces its most serious challenge. Can we have government in Mississippi which represents all of the people?
There would be many more beatings, bombings, and jailings in Mississippi that summer of '64. But the Freedom Summer voter registration effort was a stunning success, registering thousands of new black voters and focusing the nation's attention on the issue of voting rights, an issue that would dominate the nation's headlines again in 1965.